Today we're going to be making the Thai version of a Southeast Asian dish called satay. But first we got to head over to the market and grab some of the fresh ingredients we need to make it. Let's go.
So I'm looking for some fresh cilantro, and it's one of the things that you can't always find in every market, and it's not always very high quality. I really don't like buying it in tiny little plastic packages. You pay a lot of money, you don't get a lot, and it's usually much older. So I like to shop for cilantro in markets where they're really moving a lot. So Latin markets, Asian markets. And it's typically sold in bunches, loose like this with a little rubber band or a twist tie wrapped around it. And what you want to look for is, nice clean leaves without any signs of spoilage, browning, wilting, or anything like that. A lot of markets will soak them with water. They have little sprayers to keep them moist. So that's a very good idea if you want to have this last a little bit longer. Once you get them home, take a paper towel, make it damp, and then squeeze out all the excess moisture and just wrap it around it. Maybe put it in a Ziploc baggie. And that'll help keep it a little bit longer. But keep in mind that cilantro is one of those herbs that doesn't have a very long shelf life. Now in this market, in particular, they also have a few choices available. They have cilantro with the roots on, which is absolutely perfect because this is going to have a little bit longer of a shelf life. But again, look for all those signs of freshness, and the roots shouldn't be dried out. If you're looking to cook with cilantro, you might even want to go for its distant cousin. This is called culantro, or sawtooth coriander. And this is great for cooking with. It maintains that same cilantro aroma and taste, but it holds its flavor and color a little bit better in the cooking process. It's great stuff.
Now that we've done our shopping, let's get busy and start making some of this delicious food. So we're working on Thai satay. We're going to be using chicken today. And we've got all of our ingredients laid out. We've got some raw peanuts, which we're going to have to toast. We've got a few spices here, cumin, coriander, and some turmeric. Some of the fresh produce, cilantro, shallots. And then, of course, we have these lovely, lovely Thai chilies. Now, in English, you'll see different labels on this. Oftentimes, they just simply call it Thai chilies. I've seen it labeled bird's eye chilies. It is rather spicy. You can use all three of the colors. I often prefer the red, which is the most ripe and mature. But certainly you can use the green ones if that's all you can find in your local market. We've also got some cucumbers. I like the Persian cucumbers a lot. The texture is really, really nice and you don't have to peel them. Some fresh ginger. And of course, make sure that the skin is still smooth and it's not wrinkled and there's no signs of mold. You want to make sure it's really fresh. Now we got some condensed milk, coconut milk, and some palm sugar, and of course, fish sauce. Now, I like the Tiparot brand, this Tiparos, but another popular brand that's also pretty good is a Squid brand. So either one of those will work well. And of course, we need some dark meat chicken. You can use thighs or legs and thigh combos. Today I've got some fresh chicken legs to use. So now we're going to debone the chicken and start to cut it up. The first thing that I'm going to do is start to pull the skin back a little bit and just get that out of the way, because for this dish we won't actually need it. I'm going to use a boning knife, and I'm just going to cut all the way around the leg and slice down to remove one part of the meat, and then rotate and just continue going all the way around. Try to get as close as you can to the bone so you don't lose much meat. If you need to scrape against the bone, don't use the edge of your blade, use the back side of your knife. The bone is really hard and it can actually damage your blade. So don't scrape with the sharp edge of your knife. All right. Once I get that pushed all the way down, all right, I'm going to come back and start to cut in to remove the last little bit of connective tissue. And there we have it, one deboned leg. If you're making a single recipe of this, you'll need about 8 ounces of chicken dark meat. All All right, so now that we've got the chicken all cut up and deboned, we're going to make the marinade for it and start to add some of the layers of flavor in this dish. So we've got all the dark meat cut up, and you're going to need half a cup of coconut milk, a tablespoon of palm sugar, and of course if you can't find palm sugar, or if you happen to be out, of course you can always use brown sugar, or even white sugar is simply fine. I've even done it with honey. I mean, really you just need some kind of sweetener. There's sweetened condensed milk, which also adds, another layer of sweetness and some of that just savory umami dairy. It's a little bit of fish sauce, got a couple tablespoons, and some turmeric, which is really going to add some earthy notes and a lot of color. Turmeric is that spice that gives curry powder that very yellow color. If you ever get yellow rice, oftentimes yellow rice is made not with saffron but turmeric. So again, it's one of those spices that's really used a lot for its color because it's very beautiful. So we've got all that sugar broken up and all the ingredients melded together. Now we can add the marinade to the chicken and just start to mix it all together so that it really gets into the meat. Ideally, you have this overnight. If you're running short on time, at least a couple of hours will be enough to get the flavors into the meat. So now we're going to prepare the peanut sauce for the satay. And the first thing I'm going to do is put some peanuts on a pan, and I'm going to toast them in the oven. This is one of those things you really want to stay close to the oven. And I set the oven for about 375, and basically they'll start to brown when they're almost done. And as soon as they start to brown, if you're not there at that moment, they will burn really, really quickly. So a lot of times, when you go back to check the oven, they're light in color, and then all of a sudden they're too dark. So I'm going to put these in the oven, and that'll take at 375 probably about 5 to 7 minutes, give or take. Just keep an eye on it and keep checking. All right. Meanwhile, we've got several ingredients. Going to need a couple of things. I do like to use the traditional mortar and pestle to prepare this sauce. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, you can make this in a spice grinder, a food processor, a blender. All of those would work just as well. The first thing that we're going to do is take some of the spices. So I've got some coriander that's whole. If you're also using a whole cumin, you'll want to grind that up as well. And I just start with a little circular motion, some gentle pounding to break everything up, and keep going back and forth to circular. Now, it's really helpful if you have a spoon on hand. Sometimes, if things are collecting on the walls of the mortar and pestle, just kind of push it down. I like using the mortar and pestle because, you can do this without electricity, so this would be this kind of dish, that you can make on a camping trip. But there's just something really pleasurable about making a dish, using your hands. All right, and I'm going to set the spices aside. Next, we're going to peel some shallots. All right, and I like to use a paring knife for this because it's a small job. And just trim the tops and the root end off and peel away the skins. And just peel down to the point where you don't see any more of that dark, dry skin any longer. Right. The other one. Shallots are in the onion family. They're a little bit more pungent. Some compare them to a cross between an onion and a garlic because it is a little bit more pungent. If you can't find shallots in your market, you can certainly substitute onions. I would recommend red onions, but really any onion product will do. I've even made this sauce with green onions, and those work just as well. All right. So I'm going to switch over to the chef knife now because we're going to do a little bit of mincing. And I'll start by cutting the shallots in half. Be careful when they're rocking around on the cutting board like this. What I like to do is we use the claw when we're going to dice things up. So just pull your fingertips back a little bit, anchor the tip of your knife in the board, and cut right through. The idea is you don't want your fingers lying flat because then you could cut your fingertips off. That's not fun. Right, and then I'm just going to make thin slices along the length of the shallots. Again, use that claw technique, in particular when you get very close to the end of the shallot. And I'm just going to continue slicing through all of them and trying to make sure that you keep the slices lined up. A little tip for reducing the tears when working with onions and onion family products like shallots. Keep your shallots and onions in the refrigerator, and it'll reduce the tear factor a lot. Another one is make sure your knife is really sharp. If you have a dull knife and warm onions, you will be crying. All right, so now I'm just going to turn all the little strips that I made, and I'm going to mince them very, very fine. We want a smooth product as possible for the sauce, so really mince it up tiny. All right, another little tip when you want to gather everything back together, again, just like when we were scraping the chicken bones, you never scrape with the sharp blade of your knife. You're always going to scrape with the back side. And the reason being is because we want to maintain a sharp knife. And if you scrape with the blade of your knife, then you're going to make it dull. We'll set aside these shallots, and I'm going to prepare the chilies. But before I touch the chilies, I'm going to put on some gloves because, you know, better safe than sorry when you're working with chilies. If you've ever prepared chilies before and accidentally touched any part of your body that doesn't agree with chilies, you'll never forget it. So I'm just cutting off the top ends of the chilies, and then you can toss that. And the chilies, if you like them nice and spicy, you can go ahead and cut them up right away. But if you'd like to tame it just a little bit, or if you just don't like the seeds in general, I'm going to split them in half lengthwise. And I'm going to scrape the seeds out. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because the spiciest part of the chili is actually on the inside, and it's wrapped around the seeds. It's that white membrane that's in contact with the seeds in any kind of chili, not just the Thai chilies. That's the stuff that you want to get out if you don't want it too spicy. Since this is a small little chili, I'm going to use my paring knife. And again, I'm going to use the back side of the blade and just scrape out. I'm going to get out all the seeds and any of that white membrane. So now that I got all the seeds out, we can get rid of all that. And now we're just going to mince up the chilies really finely. I love the color combination, you know, if you can find the whole spectrum of chili colors when you're looking for them. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to add the chilies and the shallots to my mortar and pestle. And we can start to grind them up a little bit as well. And this is a good time for the spoon. Get the spoon in and really scrape all the sides down. All right, those peanuts should be ready now. There they are. Nice nice golden color. And we got these chilies and shallots broken up a little bit. I'll also set those aside. Makes room for my peanuts. And basically we're going to make peanut butter out of the fresh toasted peanuts. You can save yourself a little bit of time and use freshly made peanut butter, but I would encourage you to buy it freshly made without any added ingredients. Commercial peanut butter has a lot of sugar and shortening in it, and we are going to add some sugar to this sauce, but we're going to use, we could use coconut sugar instead of white sugar. And if you buy peanut butter, it already has sweetener in it, plus the shortening, which you really don't need. I know some people like to avoid that in their diet anyway. All right, so we're just going to start smashing the peanuts, and I just start real lightly. If you hit too hard in the beginning, some of the nuts can jump out and make a big mess. So just go slow and steady and just light, and as we're moving along, you'll start to get everything really broken up. And you don't have to go like creamy smooth. It's okay if there's a little bit of texture. It actually makes it a little bit interesting if you've got some crunchy bits in there. You might even like your peanut butter that way. I know lots of people buy crunchy peanut butter. This aroma's in the kitchen right now. It smells fantastic. So at this point, the peanuts are a pretty consistent sort of coarse paste, and I'm going to add back the shallots and chilies. And the spices. And we can add a little bit of the coconut palm sugar. I'm going to get about a tablespoon. And then we'll continue grinding this all into a paste. And it starts to get kind of sticky at this point. So really get that spoon in there to scrape everything down and get it off of the sides of the bowl. At this point, everything's a pretty homogeneous paste. Just gonna scrape everything down. And we're going to add a little bit of lime juice. And for the limes, what I start with is just roll them on the table or on the cutting board. Just give them a little bit of pressure. And what that does is kind of starts to break up some of the membranes so that it's easier to juice. I'm going to add the juice of one lime. And about a half a cup of coconut milk. The sauce is coming together. Smells fantastic. And we'll just season with a little bit of fish sauce. All right, we'll give that a little taste. Perfect. Lots of aromas, just enough heat, and the right amount of salt. If you need a little bit more salt, don't grab for salt. Use the fish sauce. When we're skewering the meat, you can use either bamboo skewers Or in my case, I've got some stainless steel skewers, which I really like a lot. If you're going to use the bamboo skewers, of course, it's a good idea for you to soak them in water for at least an hour because they can burn up while you're actually grilling the meat. That's one of the things I like about the stainless steel skewers is I don't have to worry about them burning up. But either way, both work. So if the meat's still a little bit large from you deboning it, just cut it up a little bit smaller so that you can thread it onto the skewer. And instead of having big chunks, right, make it into smaller pieces, because the smaller the pieces are, the more surface area you'll get to absorb some of the flavors from the marinade. And then also when we're grilling, you'll get a little bit more of that nice char, the color that the grill adds to the meat. Now, it's not just for good looks. When you see a piece of meat that has a lot of color on it from grilling, there's also a lot of flavor that is contributed by that process. So that's why, it's really key on this dish to get it as thin as you can. And when I'm threading it onto the skewer, instead of just sticking a piece of meat on, from the side and letting it cook, what I do is push it through, fold it, and then push it through the other side. Again, we're just trying to get all the meat spread out so that we get lots of surface area. Don't pack it in too tightly. Give it lots of space. All right. I'm going to cut a couple of these pieces up a little bit thinner. That looks good. So I'm going for about an inch wide piece, and then if it's very, very thick, then of course you can always come back and butterfly it open like that so it's a little bit thinner. All right, so again, that threading process. Push the skewer through, fold it, and push it through on the other side. Again, push through, fold, push through on the other side. And you can prepare these ahead of time, like let's say you're going tailgating or just a picnic at the park. You can have these skewered up the night before. You can actually put the marinade on, skewer them, and just let them marinate on the skewers. The grill, you need to make sure that it's nice and hot. I set mine on moderate low heat. Just come back and check and feel around for where all the hot spots and cool spots are so that you know where to put the different cuts of meat that you've got. And I've got a rag that I've dipped in oil, and I'm just going to lightly brush the grates of the grill so that it will help prevent sticking. If the grill is not brushed with oil, it's very, very easy for the meat to stick. And I'm going to put the skewers on at a slight angle. And I get a fresh, clean plate to put the meat on when it comes off. And this will take about 10 to 15 minutes for the meat to cook all the way through and get a nice little char on it. So for the ajat, the pickle that's going to go with this dish, we're going to start with a little Persian cucumber, and we're going to add some shallots, ginger, cilantro, of course more chilies, and you can make this as spicy as you want. Some rice wine vinegar, water, a little bit of sugar, and just a pinch of salt. Stir everything to combine and make sure that all the sugar is dissolved and all the ingredients are thoroughly combined. All right, so the meat's all cooked. It's got a nice little char on it, and I'm going to go ahead and start to pull all the skewers off of the grill. If it sticks a little bit, use your tongs to scrape underneath and kind of loosen up the meat so you don't lose too much. And just check each skewer to make sure it got cooked all the way through. Keep in mind, remember that some grills have hot spots and cool spots, and one skewer might have cooked more than the other. So you just want to make sure that everything's done all the way. All right, and that one might need a couple more minutes. Still a little pink. All right. So in the meantime, we can get ready for dinner. Let's go. All right. I know you've been waiting for this all this time. Now we're ready to eat. So we'll get 3 of the skewers, because satay comes from Chinese word which means 3. I'm going to add a little bit of the peanut sauce, just lightly drizzle over the 3 skewers. Make sure you get a nice little bit for each bite. And a little bit of the pickle on each side. Sometimes I've seen in Thai restaurants and other restaurants that are trying to make Thai food in the US that they often omit the pickle. And the idea is that if you're eating satay, the peanut sauce, it's believed that this kind of sauce heats the body up, and the cucumbers cool the body off. So it's kind of like the yin and yang, and it brings that balance to your flavor, to your taste buds, and also into your body, the health. When you combine all of these things together, it also has this balance of flavors. And in Thai, they have this wonderful word for this balance of flavors, and it's called yum. I can't wait to enjoy the yum. The way you eat it, you pick up a skewer and stab one of the cucumbers and take a bite. That was worth the wait.